my clients were starting to sell their businesses, retire, step away from their careers, step down from their professions. And many of them were not as happy as they thought they would be. Some of the business owners actually regretted selling, even though they had this plan. Others thought that going to Florida and playing golf was the be all and end all. You can't play golf 7 days a week all the time and think it's wonderful. So I thought my job was done when they had the money. Isn't that my job as a financial advisor is? Nope. There's a lot more to it than that.
She just sold her company. She sat in a room full of men negotiating the biggest deal of her lifetime. Wait, she sold for how much? I can't even believe she managed to get double her valuation. Let's keep this just between us.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Exit Whisperer. I'm psyched to bring you today's guest because I met her and fell like madly in love with her. Susan Latremoille. I think I said it right. She'll tell me if I didn't, but I've been practicing. She said I say it with a good French. Latremoille. She's amazing. So she is the founder of Next Chapter Lifestyle Advisors, and she talks and works a lot with my exited female founder community. So folks who've exited and are like trying to figure out their purpose and their identity and what's next and how they live this next chapter of their lives. And I met her from that. And then I invited her to speak. I said, okay, these are exited female founders, like come talk to them. And she's like, oh, that's funny because I am an exited female founder. I was like, huh? And she told me the story of how she sold her financial advisory practice. And the thing is, when she told it to me, it's so like simple and clear. You don't have to own a business to understand this story. And you don't have to even understand business to understand this story. All you have to do is think about your own money and how you save for retirement. And this story is going to tell you all about if you have a relationship with a financial advisor, what goes on behind the scenes for that, and how Susan was able to build that into a sellable asset. So I'm so excited for you to take a listen. And here's Susan. Welcome, Susan, to the show.
Thank you, Carrie. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
I'm so excited to have you here because we connected around what you're doing now, which is focusing on, the next chapter for women and making sure they're prepared for whatever is next in their life as they either prepare for retirement or prepare for a new venture or anything that they're doing. And we connected because I thought that resonated so much with my community of exited female founders. And then I came across an incredible realization, which is in fact that you too are an exited female founder. And that is how we ended up here today. I said, you have to come on this show. And so I'm so happy you're here.
I'm delighted to be here too. And you're right on both those counts.
Wow. All right. So you've got to tell me the story of the company that you built and exited. I think it's so interesting how it all weaves together. And maybe even you could back up before that of like how you got your start and how you came to that business.
Well, it started about 40 years ago. Actually, when I started in the financial services industry, first working with the mega giant Merrill Lynch, where I was responsible for Canadian clients investing in U.S. equities. And so that's what I did for almost 8 years at Merrill Lynch. And then in 1990, I made a big jump from being kind of an employee and basically on salary with a bonus to being truly an entrepreneur, starting my own practice under the umbrella of RBC Dominion Security. So a branch of RBC, the investment arm of RBC.
Yeah.
And I started from scratch. The good news was that I had a background in how financial markets work because it was a luxurious position, but I was a year in training with Merrill Lynch where I really got exposed to every facet of the business from fixed income, money market, corporate finance, sinking funds. I mean, it was just a wonderful exposure to the world of investments in a mega company that was really had its hands in all aspects of the business. So I wasn't starting from scratch as a novice, but I had zero assets under administration and 0 clients when I started. So I started and just did what you usually do when you start a new organization, a new enterprise, is you cold call, you network, put on seminars, just use all the ingenuity and creativity that I could bring to bear to find the right fit clients for the practice. I was initially kind of sharing an assistant. It really wasn't ideal. And I remember thinking, I'll never get ahead. I need leverage here. I need people to support me so that I can do what I can do, my unique ability, and let them do their thing. So I made my first hire, turned out to be someone that worked with me for 25 years. So she was my first hire. And I remember distinctly, she started in about September, October of that year. And we went for a Christmas lunch in December. And I said to her, we need more help. We are growing so fast that we can't do this, just the two of us. So we brought on our third person, who was also with me for that tenure as well. So just very lucky and fortunate to have built that team, that core team. We did just fine for a number of years with the three of us growing the practice. And then I was really looking for more independence from being so closely affiliated with a very large bureaucratic organization, bank, etc. So I made the decision then to lift our enterprise out of that bank environment and go with more of an independent platform, which turned out to be a really wonderful move from both a growth and a personal perspective. Because when I joined just brought our practice and joined into the new enterprise, I was immediately appointed to the board of directors of the financial holding company. And that was a great experience. I did my director certification and really became a part of the board with another colleague. And we really changed the way that these board meetings ran. We made them much more strategic in focus as opposed to more financial in focus. And so again, fast forward, grew the team, grew the clientele, and eventually sold the practice at the end of 2019.
Amazing. So I have a couple of clarifying questions that I want to make sure my listeners know. So when you start a financial advisory practice, you are managing the relationship with the client who gives you their assets, and then you invest through a vehicle, the larger one that you mentioned, and then you switched over to this more platform. So you need
Yes.
It's you, and then there's the partner that you're partnering with, which is the actual investing vehicle where the money.
Yes, I didn't have to just invest in things that they supported or offered. The beauty was I could invest anywhere, but there was subtle pressure, of course, to use a more proprietary product. And I didn't like that fact because I wanted to be completely agnostic as to product. I wanted to be able to find the best fit solutions for my clients. So that more independent platform was a much better way to do that.
I
To be
love
more independent.
love that insight, and definitely understand that when thinking about choosing your own financial advisor and who you choose and what they're motivated by and all
Your
of that.
affiliation, yes, and your motivation. That's right.
For sure. So this is separate from the Exit Whisperer and the sale, which we'll get to in a minute. But I think it's so interesting that you would start out with 0 assets under your company, and then you're building this clientele and they're trusting you with their money. How do you inspire that trust when growing from 0, to the beginning? In the beginning, it must be very hard to get people to trust you. And yet you grew so quickly and steadily and were able to build a team and do all of that. What do you think was the key that really instilled that trust?
Well, I think it was a couple of things. First of all, I'd had this incredible background with Merrill Lynch. So I knew more about how investment decisions should be made than the average person that I was competing with.
Yeah.
Because I'd had this deep training. I'd worked with some of the best brains in the business, some of the most highly regarded Wall Street analysts. My clients were really professional portfolio managers making investment decisions. And I knew that that was a real leg up over the average advisor who's just gone through a training program and then they're experimenting on their clients. Whereas I really felt that I had a grasp how the whole financial markets worked. So I think having that knowledge base was part of the installation of trust. But I also think another part of it was communication. People have a lot of angst and fear when it comes to their wealth and their money. And I think that by really communicating closely with them on a regular basis, they started to trust, they started to understand more. And I was never trying to do cookie cutter solutions for them. I was trying to really listen to what their needs were, what their goals, what their aspirations were, and then manage the money and help them plan to actually suit their individual and personal circumstances. So I think nothing fosters trust more than people feeling that they're heard, they're understood, and that you have tailor-made solutions that suit them.
For sure. And I think, there's something to be said for having the experience of having had worked at a Merrill Lynch. Experience does matter when it comes to trusting. It's not all just relationship. It's knowing that.
Exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. So, okay, so you get to a time where you decide to sell. So this is so interesting to me because I'm thinking about this in terms of trust. So you have these people, financial advisory work is relationship based. You've got people who, okay, we believe in you. Here's our money. And now you're going to sell that business. Talk to me about that decision. And were you worried? I don't even know in this space. I know in my own space, but were you worried about the impact that it might have on your clients because of it being the relationship factor? First, I want to know why you decided to sell. Then I want to know if that was in your head.
Okay, I'm going to answer the second piece first.
Okay.
And I think there were two parts to that. One is that it wasn't just all about me by that time. By the time I was ready to sell, it was really, I had a team. And the day-to-day interaction with the clients, all the sort of administrative, tactical decisions and things that had to be done were done by team members. So I wasn't their only contact. By that time, I was more looking at the strategic overview of their situation and again, communicating, at a much broader and higher level. So the fact that the team was involved was very important because it wasn't just a one-woman show at that time. It was definitely a team effort. So, I think that having those broader relationships, not just like it's all about me, and if I'm not there, then nothing happens and doesn't get done, was a way to sort of prepare people. Okay. The other thing was, you start to get gray hair. I was in my 60s and the clients are saying, naturally they're worried. What's going to happen? What happens to us if something happened to you, the hit by a bus scenario? Right. And when are you planning to retire? Right. So I was getting those questions. And at that point in time in my early 60s, I really wasn't thinking about selling or retiring or anything like that. But I thought, I should have a plan in place that if something did happen to me, and when the day came that I wanted to exit, what would be that plan? What would I have in place? And so I started my succession plan more as a hit by a bus plan than an actual exit plan. So the hit by a bus plan was if something happens to me, then I had somebody in mind to step in and take over the leadership of the team and provide continuity with the clients. It just so happened that I found and had the perfect successor for my practice. He was a gentleman, which was fine. By that time I had an all-woman team. So, it was kind of nice to bring some gender balance into the equation.
Totally. Diversity in the direction. Right.
And he was 20 years my junior. So there was going to be a long runway for those clients with him at the helm. So that age gap, it wouldn't have been very good if I had sort of said, well, this person's 3 years or 5 years younger, because they'd be asking the same question. So 20 years was a great gap between my age and between his age. And the good news was that we had been colleagues. We'd got to know each other well. I knew his business. I knew enough about it. He knew enough about my business. And we decided that we had a lot in common in our approach to things. So there was definitely a meeting of the minds and understanding of the kind of culture that we had created in our own organizations. And he was really anxious and keen to grow and to acquire and so on. I know that a lot of people struggle with who their successors are. And, sometimes it doesn't work out. I have to say, well, we did our homework, but I was also extremely lucky to find such a good person to take on the role. So that part of it went very smoothly. And, to this day, I have utmost respect for him and what he's doing. And I knew the clients would be well served under his leadership.
So he had his own practice and
Mhm.
he bought your practice and brought the clients under his.
That's right. And expanded the team as well. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So did your team end up going over with him?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, wonderful. And so, okay, did you bring this to him? Did he bring this to you? Or did this sort of organically occur?
Great question, Carrie. I think it was more of an organic situation because I had started a best practices little cluster of colleagues, and we would share best practices with each other over a period of several years. We met 3 times a year, and we had these meetings where we would say at one point, let's focus on compensation, or another meeting would be focused on team, or another would be on process, and we would each present our ideas, and we actually voted on who did the best presentation, and we put $20 in the pot, and whoever got voted the best had to buy drinks. I mean, it was just, we made a fun time of it, but we took it seriously in sharing these best practices. So I got to know him over a period of years, not just know him, but know how he thought and how he approached all these things. So I think that was really important, an important part to the lead up of the whole thing.
I know a little bit about your exit. I know it was a 7-figure exit. I know it was wonderfully happy. I know, all of that great stuff. How does your work, you're like in this group together. This is an individual acquirer that has this business. How do you come about when those informal discussions become formal? How do you go about valuing the business or discuss? Is that a discussion you have together? How does that happen when it is so organic like this? I'm very interested in that.
Yeah. So of course we had to have a mechanism. First, we didn't know the timing of when this transition would take place. It could have happened overnight if something happened to me, but we didn't know. And we purposely left it open. And he said, I'm not in a rush. So if it's 3 years from now, 5 years from now, it's fine. It was fine with him. So that gave us time together to sort of prepare for it. And then, when it was time for me to say, okay, I'm going to put a line in the sand, this is going to be the exit date, that was actually 2 years out.
Wow.
So the first year, he teamed with me on meetings. He met all the clients more than once, not just once, but he would participate in meetings and so on until there was a comfort level and a trust that started to transition from me to him. And my team was still intact, remember, still looking after those clients. The final year of the transition, I was just very much in the background. He was in the foreground, I was in the background. And so I think the trust was able to shift from me to him because we took our time. His value system was similar. He was good on relationships. The team was intact. So there were a lot of elements that made for this transition to go as smoothly as it did.
So you formalize the transition and then it takes place over a few years of building trust. First, it was formalized though. So first you say, okay, we're doing this.
Yes. And then we had a written agreement. Then it was, all documented. And then we used a mechanism for valuation. You asked about that as well. So in that business, there's several ways to look at, how you value the practice. First of all, I had a premium practice. I had a few number of high net worth clients. That's worth a lot more in the market than someone that has 500 clients, is running with one assistant, no real team, and small clients, because you can't service everybody. So premium valuation for a premium practice. And basically the way it works in the industry, it was a multiple of an average of the 3 previous years.
Of the earnings?
Of the earnings, yes. So it was a multiple, and the multiple was somewhat the same in the industry. I mean, it was within the industry guidelines, but on the higher end at that time because of the nature of the practice.
And especially because the nature of the practice and the amount of time that you gave to transition it so beautifully. Like, what a wonderful exit. And so you have this exit, you build this, what a career, so exciting. And now you're in your 60s and here you are starting something new. So talk to me about how that came to be And tell me a little bit about Next Chapter and your next chapter.
Part of the exit was driven by the phenomena I saw with many of my clients and wanting to do something about it. So the phenomena that I saw was my clients were starting to sell their businesses, retire, step away from their careers, step down from their professions. And what I noticed was that many of them were not as happy as they thought they would be. Some of the business owners actually regretted selling, even though they had this plan, but they regretted selling. Others thought that, going to Florida and playing golf was the be all and end all, only to find that it was boring after a while. Their golf game didn't improve. What next kind of thing. You can't play golf 7 days a week all the time and think it's wonderful. So one by one, I saw this phenomena happening and I thought, I always prided myself in taking a holistic approach. I thought my job was done when they had the money. Isn't that what my job as a financial advisor is? Nope. There's a lot more to it than that. And so I knew that I wanted to dedicate my next part of my own career, my next chapter, into solving this issue for business owners and people that are making this transition, either selling or retiring in the classic sense of the word, or starting something new and so on. So that's what was the genesis of Next Chapter Lifestyle Advisor. So I sold, and I had done a couple of things. First is I became certified in an assessment tool that we use regularly with our coaching clients. And I also got my certification as a certified professional or retirement coach through the Retirement Coaches Association, and another certification through Retirement Options. So the two main North American bodies that certify people in retirement coaching. Fast forward through that, I met my now business partner, Marianne Osher. It was in 2020, the beginning of COVID. I'm located in Toronto, Canada. She's located in Huntsville, Alabama. Thank goodness for Zoom. And in a way, thank goodness for the lockdown, because we had no choice but to start everything from a virtual perspective. There was no going across the border. There was no travel. And we found that we were entirely compatible. Her strengths, my weaknesses just fit perfectly. We complemented each other so well. So at the beginning of 2020, we started Next Chapter Lifestyle Advisors with two goals in mind. One, to work with individuals, couples, business owners who have exited, women, couples, whatever form it takes, to help them build their next chapter. And I don't want to say retire, because that's a bad word these days.
Right.
It was more about their next chapter of their lives. And it was often, in many cases, about rewiring, not retiring, rewiring and doing something new, just as I had done, and Marianne as well. And that was one audience. The other was working with other financial advisors when I was no longer a financial advisor. So I wasn't in competition with them in any way, shape, or form. That was part of the reason for exiting, so that I wouldn't be in competition, but enabling them to have different conversations with their clients, giving them the tools, the resources, the education to start to move the dial towards truly being more holistic. And let's face it, for financial advisors, this stage of a person's life is probably when they have the most assets that aren't going anywhere. I know the industry makes a lot about this, wealth generational transfer that's going on, blah, blah, blah. But I maintain that if you're working with a business owner who's 65 and exiting, first of all, they've got a pile of money usually, or a payout that's looking good. That money's not going anywhere for sometimes 20, 30 years. They have no debt. The kids are educated. They've bought all the real estate probably they're going to have, or maybe they'll add on a new chalet or something like that.
Like you're not really in the age of acquisition anymore. It's just sitting there. Yeah.
Exactly. And many of them with the high net worth clients aren't even going to spend all the money they have. Right. So then that becomes, to my mind, a perfect fit, perfect niche client for a successful advisor to manage that relationship and that money for a long period of time. For a financial advisor, it's a very profitable client type to really be working with. And boy, they need it, because people are not prepared. They might be prepared financially for the exit, the deal, but they're not prepared personally.
100%. I cannot echo what you say enough. And I know that for our community, which we have a community of exited female founders, Marianne spoke, and it was moving and it resonated, and it's not just about the money. And that's the thing. And you've tapped into that in such a fantastic fantastic way. And so I feel so lucky that we connected and that you're in our community and really that you're able to share this story like this. I think it's an interesting and simple explanation of a business journey and its exit, and then finding your next chapter within this and being able to really find that joy. It's really wonderful.
Exactly. And it's all now evolved into us being invited to be on the faculty of the Exit Planning Institute as well, where we're teaching in January. Our course is coming out in the basic SEPA designation module on personal planning. And so it's just been a lovely fit with them, because most of the focus for them up to this point has been either on business planning or personal financial planning.
Yes.
They never really put meat on the bones of personal planning. So we are the lucky ones that are getting to educate the SEPAs and their audiences on the importance of this.
Oh, that's really wonderful. That is wonderful, Susan. Well, thank you so much. And if people want to find out about Next Chapter Advisors, where do they go?
So our website, of course, nextchapterlifestyleadvisors.com. Email me directly. Always love to set up Zoom meetings with interested parties. Susan at nextchapterlifestyleadvisors.com. And I have a pretty robust LinkedIn presence as well. So I'm sure we'll be connected through somebody else that's on LinkedIn. Notably you, Carrie, and the other people in the Whisper group as well. So 3 ways: website, email me directly, or check out our LinkedIn.
That's awesome. Susan, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your story.
It's my pleasure, Carrie. Thank you.